Hi, I'm Tony Gondola, welcoming you to the next edition of Stories from Space. Enjoy. In the early morning hours of December 25th, 1968, the flight directors in Apollo Mission Control held their breath as they waited for Borman, Lovell, and Anders to reappear around the eastern limb of the moon. It all depended on the big service propulsion engine at the back of the service module. If the engine burned for the expected 2 minutes and 23 seconds, Mission Control would reacquire the spacecraft at the expected time. If they saw the spacecraft early or late, they would know that something had gone very, very wrong. Much to the relief of Mission Control, and indeed the world, the spacecraft reappeared at the correct time. With Jim Lovell's report of "Please be informed there is a Santa Claus," everyone knew the craft was coming home. To understand the importance of the Apollo SPS engine, let's take a closer look at the engine that was so critical to these missions. Built by Aerojet, the Apollo SPS engine produced 20,500 pounds of thrust and had a number of important roles during a lunar mission. The initial path to the moon, as established by the Saturn V third stage, was never perfect. During the trip out to the moon, mid-course corrections would need to be made to keep the spacecraft on the proper flight path. The same was true for the trip back. Mid-course corrections would be needed in order to hit the Earth's atmosphere at the right angle so that the spacecraft wouldn't burn up or bounce out into deep space. These small burns were normally just a few seconds long, but were critical. They were also a good opportunity to check out the engine's performance before getting to the moon and committing to lunar orbit. If all went well, some 69 hours after liftoff, the crew would find themselves on the backside of the moon, out of contact with the Earth, approximately 60 miles above the surface. With the spacecraft pointed backwards, the SPS engine would fire for approximately 6 minutes, reducing velocity from 5,000 miles an hour to 3,000 miles an hour, so that the spacecraft would be captured into lunar orbit. While the crews of Apollo 8, 10, and 11 were on a free return trajectory that would bring them safely back to Earth if the engine didn't fire, later missions did not have that luxury. While the moonwalkers were on the surface, the SPS engine would be used to make small burns to make sure that the orbit of the command module would be in the correct plane when the astronauts returned from the lunar surface. Once it was time to come home, the SPS would again be fired on the backside of the moon, out of touch with Mission Control. This burn was critical. If the engine suffered a malfunction that prevented it from firing, the crew was condemned to staying in lunar orbit until the oxygen ran out. If the burn was too long or too short, the crew would find themselves on an unplanned trajectory from which it probably would not be possible to recover. In short, this engine just had to work and work correctly. There simply was no backup for the critical maneuvers it had to perform. With the exception of Apollo 13, which because of the timing of the accident was able to use the engine on the lunar module to return home, every other Apollo crew that went to the moon staked their lives on the proper operation of the SPS engine. The key to the reliability of this engine was in its simplicity of design. The fuel, a blended hydrazine, and the oxidizer, nitrogen tetroxide, were hypergolic. That is to say, they burn on contact. That eliminates the need for a separate ignition system. If you can get the fuel and oxidizer into the combustion chamber, the engine will fire. To further streamline things, the fuel and oxidizer tanks were pressurized with helium. This forces the fuel and oxidizer into the combustion chamber and eliminates the need for any kind of a complicated pump. Open a few valves and the fuel will flow. The valves and plumbing that feed the engine were designed with a high level of redundancy, giving multiple paths and ways to start the engine. Lastly, the combustion chamber was ablative, designed to slowly erode away rather than being actively cooled, reducing the amount of plumbing in the engine and again, greatly simplifying the overall design. Like most things in Apollo, the SPS engine did everything that was asked of it. Much beloved by the astronauts, especially command module pilots, it's a testament to the people who designed, built, and operated the hardware that took us on our first off-Earth adventures. Well, that wraps up our latest edition of Stories from Space. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to check this location for future updates and information. And for now, stay home, stay safe, and stay curious.